Okay, guys, welcome back to Let's Get Freaky podcast. Tonight, I welcome two special guests to the show. We've got a returning guest, and he's bringing his beautiful lady with him tonight as well. We've got Mark Anthony Wyatt, and we also welcome Janice as well. Guys, thank you for being here. Janice, we've heard a lot about you. Mark has told us a little bit already, but we're going to hear your side of the story tonight with your paranormal. And let's get into it. How are we, guys? Welcome.
Okay.
Hi,
Oh,
Tommy.
good. Yeah, good to be here. Thank you for having us. And yeah, so don't believe all that you might have heard. Obviously, Mark embellishes just
What?
add a little bit sometimes.
Oh no.
No.
Oh, thanks for that.
No. You don't, really. Except maybe those things he might have said about me that time might not be true. And I don't know.
Am I going to get you in trouble tonight,
Anyway,
Mark?
so right,
She's
yeah,
digging a hole in here, isn't
I
she? She's only been on here 30 seconds. She's digging a hole.
I'll
I'm going to
stop
enjoy
digging.
this. I'm going to enjoy
Okay,
this.
okay. No, I might have no filters because I had a little brandy in my tea, so my I should have warned you.
So
Anyway,
you guys met through like
maybe I
paranormal podcasts, is that right?
we did well, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll let Mark you
Okay.
start.
So I don't know what
I'll
to
stop
say now because
talking.
she's going to say I'm embellishing.
Not
I
embellish.
can't tell the story now.
You can tell your serious story.
Okay. So I'll keep my part brief and then you can jump in and explain. Okay. If you're in a fit state like that. Right. Cool. So going back to sort of, I suppose, well, the early 2000s, 2005 onwards, and then I could keep a friend of mine who I'd known in the southeast of England called Morris, and he'd moved down to Cornwall, and he was about 20 miles up the road. He was at Tintagel, and I was in Bude at the time. And cutting a long story short, he rang us one day and he said, "Oh, I bought he bought his house down there and he was doing it up and everything." He said, "Come over." So that I'm not going to go into that today. That's fantastic. The whole thing was great, but we sort of rekindled an old friendship. We'd never fallen out. It's just that we lived in different areas, and then suddenly he's back in my on my patch. So he was one of these guys that was into the mind, body, spirit sort of circuit, which they have in England, which is a lot of these people who sort of, they're sort of gurus, sort of self-appointed guru types who think they can teach you how to breathe properly and all this stuff. They're sort of slightly strange, a lot of them. And he was into all that, whereas I was more into the sort of paranormal side of things. And I would at the time I would have looked upon them as more like the woo brigade, But he had some things going on which were really interesting, and we sort of learned from each other. So I sort of gradually got into some of his stuff, and he got into some of my stuff. And now he did a lot of meditation, and he did a lot of yoga and all this sort of stuff. So he used to tell me, and he used to talk about intention and how if you ask the universe, as he said, you could get what you wanted as long as you sort of did it with the best possible um, purposes for everyone. Like there's this little phrase there somewhere like to the best for all concerned or something like that. And he used to talk about this stuff a lot and he used to do it a lot. And then one day, this would have been probably around 2010, 12, something like that. I decided, go into detail why, but I thought I'd give it a go. And no one was around. I was at home and I thought, I'm going to give this a go. So I tried this sort of technique that you told me about, which was basically laying down quietly on your bed, no one about, upturned palms of your hand, a bit like well, it's like you're praying, really. And you sort of wait until you feel the energy, and you do feel it. I mean, I did. And then you sort of, with intention, I don't think I said it out loud, but I sort of spoke to whatever, it's like, as I say, a bit like prayer, really. And I really, I think on that day, I really did a good job of it. I mean, I'm not, I honestly think I did a good job of it, and I was capable of doing it. I wouldn't be able to do it every day, but on that day, it was the right day for me, and I had the right frame of mind, everything. But when I'd finished doing it, I just put it out of my mind, which is important thing. You have to get out of the way of it. Once you've asked for something, you have to get out of the way. Otherwise, I mean, Crowley used to talk about this as well. So like you put it out there into the universe, as my friend Morris would have said, and then you just have to wait. And it might, whatever you've asked for might not come back to you in the form that you thought it would. Um, it always reminds me of that joke actually, where the guy wanted to have you know, you got time for a dirty joke. He
Yeah.
wanted to have a 2 foot doobie, 2 foot down there, and his legs fell off, and because he wanted it to hit the ground or something like that. So it's like that. You've got to be careful what you ask, but you have to be careful what you ask for, and it won't necessarily come to you the way you thought it would. You might have to suffer to get what you want, you know. So I did all that, and then time went on. I forgot all about it. Then I had my owl experience, my with the large owl, which we won't go into now because we've discussed it before. But when the owl thing, when I look back at this now from years in the future from that, I can see that the owl thing was possibly a result of that meditation somehow, because it was like a little while later, a year or so actually, 2013. Yeah, so it would have been maybe a year or so later. So I had this experience with the owl. Now I think the owl thing was a gateway, and I think the meditation thing led to the owl thing. And then from there, I'd want some of the things I'd been asking for was like more, um, like I'd always wanted to write time and never got around to it. And I sort of asked for that power, if you like. To I mean, I could write. I was pretty good at English at school, and I was better at the literature than the grammar actually. So I wanted to go down that route, but I needed something to get me going, to start me off on that. And I thought, well, what can I actually write about, which is in my life? Because they always say write about what you know or what's around you, and use all that around you. So my thing was, I had like an exercise was to sort of try and remember all the weird stuff that had happened to me over the years, and there was a lot of it. And then I basically started writing, and that's how Wyatt's Weird World came about. And so I put Wyatt, cutting all this short, I put Wyatt's Weird World out there. And then I got on a few podcasts. This is about 2000. Oh, in the meantime, my mate Morris unfortunately died of MS, I think MS, in 2014. And then I'm sort of getting stuck into this writing, and I put this out there, and I get on, I think it was Jim Howard, and I was on Jim Howard talking about my father's experience, not my own really, but I was sort of advertising the book at the time because I'd had loads of stuff happen to me as well. So but I started the book with my father's story about the gunpowder worker ghost, and then everything else was mine. And Jim Howard had me on there, and I was discussing it, and one or two others. I think I went on Where Did the Road Go around that time, and a couple of others. And then this is where we go over to Janice, because Janice, I didn't even know Janice at this time. I had no idea who she was. And she was, so I'm in England at the time, Cornwall, Cornish bit of England, which like down the far west.
Beautiful part.
And Janice is in Illinois. Yeah, she's in central Illinois, or Flatland, as I call it. And she's basically, well, you could take over from there. So this is where she comes into this story. So I hope I didn't go on too much there. But
right.
No, man.
So my story goes way back too, because as a child, I had paranormal experiences growing up. I grew up in an area that had previously been like a trading post. Our home was new. My parents had built the home. When we were building the home, they were pulling up these big beams and these relics from the past, from what this place had previously been. So when that happens, we think that like echoes or the things that had happened before, especially if they were impactful, there were like militia practices on site. There were probably was some violence and those types of things. There were definitely areas around there where our animals didn't want to go, and just this was my life growing up. So always have been interested in paranormal topics. So just I'm always the weirdo in the room. I was always the weird kid at school, at work. I try to stay in the closet at work because they had like a normal government job. So I had to try and be like normal. Um, but it was getting harder and harder to try to, you know, not be weird. But I was doing a pretty good job of it. But then around about that same time, so my part sort of dovetails right about 2012. I sort of met a group of people and got into yoga and meditation and dance is sort of it was a group called Dances Meditation, and it sort of was, conscious awareness, expanding realities. We did a lot of meditation and those types of things. So I was getting into this as well. And always I had been in the paranormal and been a fan of anything weird and, the ghost stories. I was a big fan of Jim Harrell's Campfire. And right about the time Mark was on there, I was listening to a lot because I was home. I had gotten sick, and so I was just kind of home recuperating, and caught this, and it was like, oh, who is this guy? I love his voice, and it was about England, and always been sort of
No, what she wants to say is,
obsessed with England.
who is this guy embellishing his stories? That's what she wanted to
No,
say.
I didn't.
No, I'm not going to let you forget that.
I did not. I meant the part about me. Whatever you might have said, I didn't listen to
Did you want a big fight on it tonight?
Whatever you said, it worked, brother. Whatever you said, it worked.
Episode where we break up.
It done the job. Whatever you said was the right thing.
Anyway. So where we pick up.
I don't know. I'll put you off now, haven't I? So you were listening to Jim Harold and you were ill in bed in Springfield, Illinois, yeah?
Yes, in Springfield, yeah. So anyway, at the same time we had I think we were both part of Jim Harold. He had just started this Facebook group and we were both active on social media at the time in Facebook. And I saw Mark on there and just messaged him. And I said, well, you were the guy on Jim Harold's Campfire talking about the story with their dad. And then I asked him some questions, in the public chat forum. And then one thing led to another. He basically got tired of this, what did you say, rude American woman harassing you?
This pushy American woman. She was asking me questions about tea. And Tommy, don't you? You know how it is.
Well,
they ask you about tea and they ask you about the Queen. Do you know the Queen?
No.
Yeah.
No, the usual.
No,
there
he goes now.
Tea.
He's embellishing, and yeah,
we're related to royalty.
I never would ask about the Queen. Anyway,
at some point, I think. Yeah.
Anyway, so it's just. Well, we were just friends, and I was, but weirdly at the same time, I was not looking for a relationship. I was, just fine with my sort of esoteric and yoga and just being, in the zone. I was, aiming for Zen as much as I could with my mundane life and my mundane job. And I was content, and sometimes things just happen. You don't see them coming. And yeah, Mark was one of those things. Didn't see coming, but at the same time, I had a friend who was very into astrology, and I was taking an astrology class, and she did my solar return chart, and all these things kept coming up in this chart. These idiosyncrasies and these cards kept coming up. Like we were doing the tarot, and this card, two separate sessions, two separate times, came up twice, and it was like it was in my face. Look at me, something important, something monumental, something transformative is about to happen to you. And that was right about the time I met Mark. So it was in the cards, it was in my chart. But at the time when you're going through it, you don't see it. This was just a
Yeah.
guy that I knew who was really interesting online, and little did I know that was my transformative, my here's your sign kind of thing from the universe. Hey, pay attention, something's about to happen. And since that time, like both of our lives have
Yeah,
completely,
totally changed. Which
completely
goes back
transformed.
to that medication.
We need
Meditation. Yeah, I think
medication.
I need medication now. Yeah, so the meditation led to the experience, I think, and then the experience basically gave me that push to do the writing and just sort of, I think, opened up a few channels really. And then
Mm-hmm.
from there, as that was a quick précis of it. So Janice steps in, she hears me. And there was one of the experiences that I'd written about, one of my really early sort of, which I don't want to, the sort of the weird blue lights and everything and the flying carpet and stuff.
Right.
But when I described the going out of body thing, which, at that age I didn't know, didn't have words for it. Wasn't it that experience was something that you,
Yes. So
yeah,
when I heard Mark and he was talking about his book, of course, being curious, I had to get the book. So as the account is referring to is his, I think you call it the flying carpet or the
yeah,
magic
yeah,
carpet.
yeah,
And as I was reading that, I remember I was sitting in my house reading because I had a Kindle I was reading on my phone. And I literally had to put my device down and step away. You know how sometimes people talk about, I think there was a Friends episode where Joey had to put the scary book, he had to put it away in the freezer just because it was too much. Sorry, this is like American TV
I love
back in
Friends.
the day. But anyway, it was like that. I had to put my literal phone down and walk away from it because I was so shook by this account because it
yeah,
awakened a memory in me
yeah.
that I didn't even know I had.
But it was also you
And
said,
it was
sorry,
it was so
yeah,
it literally just shook me to
yeah,
my core. And I realized then that I'd had that same experience or
yeah,
that
that's it.
exact same
The way I
feeling.
described it
It
sort of
was,
hit home,
yeah,
Whereas
in a
Wow.
very
she
deep
might have
way.
read that somebody else saying it, they may have not described it quite the same way, or maybe they didn't really have it and they just put down what other people say or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Can
But
you
But
share what
whatever
that
I
experience
said
was?
yeah, I've
just gelled.
um
Yeah.
so you were talking about in your book about how you knew you
When I
knew
knew they were coming.
you knew they were coming and there was
Yeah.
nothing you could do to
But I
stop
didn't know
it.
what they was. I mean, it was just a feeling. But there's some, it's like every now and again, I don't know how often it would have been, maybe once or twice a year or something. But between times, I would always forget, like I was meant to forget. But
When it
in the build up to it happening, which may have been 5 minutes, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, I have no idea, it might have been a minute. It was like, it was a sudden reawakening of like, oh, this has happened before. I recognize this feeling. I mean, it's like when it was like a dread, like, oh, I don't want to do this. No, 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 I don't want to do this. And it would happen. And I don't remember how I explained it in the book, but it was something similar to that. And then it would be like this feeling like I was in my head, like my whole being was in my head, and I was like crammed in there, and I was trying to get out and then break out, and then everything followed from that. So was
It
that the
was
piece?
almost,
Yeah,
no, it was almost that out of body part. And what the
yeah,
part that got me was the floating out, like down the stairs,
yeah,
out the door,
yeah,
that piece. And it was like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
that floating. And then the other part was being, you said flying on the carpet, but the presence
That,
behind
yeah,
you, this presence
yeah,
behind you.
which you
And you
couldn't see.
said, right, that you can't see, but you know there's a
You know
presence
it's there.
behind you.
Yeah.
And you knew there were other people with you. You
Yes, I
weren't
could see that. I
alone.
could see that.
And it's like,
Yeah.
and I was just wondering, maybe somehow we were together in that experience, somehow, like whatever
Yeah.
happen on this astral plane,
Yeah.
maybe we knew each
Yeah.
other at some point.
It's possible.
I mean, if
Wow.
that, I mean, this is not what I got then. What I
No,
got
no.
then was total freak out. Put the
Yeah.
book down, step away. We'll think about this later because we're too freaked out. I'm too freaked out right now to
Yeah. Yeah.
even
Yeah.
to delve deep. It's just
Yeah.
the analytical part of you then
Yeah.
kicks in and says, well, these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
And that's sort of been like our relationship. It's like
So
these pieces fit together. We had so many things that linked up. Just,
Wow.
well, when I,
about the part with so if you move on a bit around that same time, or I don't even know when it was actually now. Get a date on it. I could get a date on it because I was invited to go to
oh,
High
yeah.
Wycombe. You know High Wycombe, just sort of north of London a bit, isn't it?
Hmm.
And a guy, I don't you might have chatted to him, Neil Ward.
No, I still need
He
to. I
was
will
running a
do.
group up in High
Yes,
Wycombe. With like, oh yeah, right, yeah.
I will do.
I can't remember who contacted who, but he invited me up and he said, "Would you give a talk on the?" Oh well, I think he gave me a choice. So I chose my father's story, the in White's Would have a gunpowder ghost, because I knew all the history of everything, and I just wanted to talk about that one. So I did a talk in High Wycombe in this pub. There would have been about probably 20, something like that. Really nice little atmosphere, very supportive. And it was my first public talk, I think. Well, it was, yeah. And a little bit nervous at first, but I had one of these little things where you could sort of show the photos up on the screen and everything. So I did all that. And then afterwards, we went back to, there was this couple who I haven't seen them for years, but I can't remember their surname, but they were Menna and Matt. And because at the time I was living in Cornwall, probably about 7, 8 hours away from something like that, at least. And they said, "Oh, you can stop over." And Matt had just built this log cabin in his backyard. And after my talk, all of these people who'd been at or a lot of the people who'd been at these little pub gigs, so to speak, they came back, and some of them were involved in the paranormal. You probably know a few of the people. Ben Emlyn Jones, you might have heard of, nice guy, very
Hmm.
knowledgeable. The twins, the massive twins, I can never remember, Kinsella or something like that. Quite a few of them were there, and they did this. They did their own sort of stories. When I say stories, their experiences, and in the log cabin. So it's like a little private private gig after the main one.
Oh
And
wow.
I was able to sit and listen to all these fantastic stories people had, experiences. And while I was in there, this lady, one of their regulars, a blonde lady. I can't remember much more about her other than she got a bit argumentative with another lady. But I won't go into that now. But um, and she was, I think, she'd had a few too many sherbets, and she was sat next door to me, and she was like, she kept getting closer and closer. She was like leaning into me like a bit too close.
Hmm.
And I kept trying to shift away, and she kept coming in and coming in like this. And she wasn't like flirting. I'm not saying that, but she was just like in my space,
Yeah.
and it was
Personal space, lady.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think she might have had a few drinks, as I said. So anyway, so while this is going on, then she got into a bit of a Barney with this other lady, and they were like a cat fight, really. Turned out that they didn't really fall out. They just liked a good scrap, and they do it regularly. That's what I was told later. It was just their way.
That's London for you.
So anyway, that went on. Yeah. So that evening or the next morning, I drove back down to Cornwall, and at some point, Janice contacted me, and you can take over from here.
Okay. Well, first, I just like to say that gurgling you noise,
Yeah,
that
that wasn't
gurgling
my
noise,
stomach.
we'll address that if that came through on the audio.
Yeah, sorry
That
about
is our
that.
song.
Yeah,
It's
the,
engineered
yeah, and
not to
the
code, we'll
ground is
say.
saturated here at the moment.
It's a bit noisy sometimes, so we're not
Mm.
we are genuinely experiencing plumbing
I
issues, not
I
a
thought it was a Sasquatch for a
personal
second. It
tragedy.
sounded Bigfooty.
Yeah,
This is
we
what
go
we
with
have
that.
around here.
I know you were in a Bigfoot area.
It's a poltergeist.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it's got to be.
We'll say
Yeah.
it was Bigfoot.
So, and so right, we'll go with that.
I should just before you
So,
go on is say that the point we didn't know each other. We
well, we
honestly
did
we'd had a
only
little bit of chat
online.
online on the Facebook group. At this stage, me, Janice was just this lady that was very sort of
You thought I was
push
annoying.
pushy, a bit pushy,
No,
like
I'm
always wanting to
not.
talk to me.
I'm
And I
not.
was like, "Who is this woman?" But she grew on me, and I must admit, she
Yeah.
looked good. So
Oh
I know it's
goodness.
terrible, but anyway,
Hmm.
so it went on. But we didn't really know each other,
We were friends.
so she contacted me out of the blue again after that, and she didn't know. Well, you can carry on and say.
Well, right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't know anything about what Mark was doing, where he was going. I had no knowledge of his personal life at all. And, I would see like his posts on Facebook, that was it. And prior to that, I don't believe you had posted anything about the specifics or what you were doing or where you were going
I tended to keep that sort of spooky stuff quiet.
off
Yeah,
Facebook. Yeah.
because like for the reasons we said earlier, because most of the people I knew, especially on Facebook, I haven't been on it for many years, but well, when I was on there, most of the people I knew were either very old friends or family, and none of those people, had an interest in it, and they all thought I was crazy for even thinking about it. So like they, you could never talk to any of them about this stuff, and the ones you can, they just sort of change the subject to football or something else
Hmm.
because they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to go there. So that's why I didn't put it on Facebook or anything. And so I had that, you know, I was, I was quite pleased that I'd been to this pub and given this talk, and I was quite not, yeah, proud. I suppose a little bit proud that I'd done something like that
Hmm.
at the time. But I couldn't really tell anyone because it was still a little bit taboo in my world at the time, anyway.
Mhm.
So anyway, so Janice,
So I think I had your email because I think I initially emailed you to say, "Oh, I enjoyed the book," and I maybe asked a few questions about it. Nothing, like too personal or too untoward, even though he says I was pushy. I did not think I was pushy. I was I was
well,
curious. And I don't know, it was like right
it's
away.
our culture. The
I
American way is a bit more upfront, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
I
Well,
like
I
that though.
just
It's good.
sense that
Yeah,
Art just
yeah.
needed to be given a hard time. I don't know. I just felt like I just poke at him a little.
Yeah,
He likes it.
poker bear.
Really. So anyway, um I
Yeah.
I so the reason, and I debated and I was thinking this guy's gonna think I'm insane. Nothing like this has ever happened to me before. But I have to know if it was true. I have to know if this experience genuinely happened or if it's something my brain just made up. But it was very, very weird. And even in my sort of meditation, I'd never done anything like this, never even tried. So I had a dream that would have coincided with the night or around about the same time Mark was doing his talk, his when he was doing his
Yeah.
presentation.
Given the time differences.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And my dream was I had gone to where he was, and I'd seen him, and I specifically remembered like the layout of the room and conversations, and I specifically saw this woman like leaning over him. She had like light blonde or light hair in his face, but I could feel his feelings like, oh, you're making me uncomfortable. I could feel what he was feeling, but sort of as I was by his side, sort of looking over his shoulder, kind of like I am now. I was kind of like this. I was close and I was right beside him in this experience. And there were like certain things that stood out. And I remember as I was waking up, I got this feeling of, having to come back into my body. There was like this stretching, like silly putty. I don't know if you all had like silly putty, but it was like stretching, 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 and then I was back in. And I didn't want to be. I wanted to stay there and have fun at this party with Mark. I was having the best time. Anyway, so when I think I wrote this down so I didn't forget, I even drew a little diagram because you know how you forget things, after you wake up sometimes if you have a
I
dream.
do.
So I was like, I'm going to just document this. And then at the time, I wasn't even brave enough to share it because I thought he's just going to think I'm crazy. But anyway, I did get the courage. I emailed him. I even attached a little photo of the diagram that I had made. And I just said, does any of this sound familiar to you? I was getting these impressions. This has never happened to me before. It was so spontaneous. It was out of the blue. And then you came back. You didn't come back to me for a long time. And I thought, okay, great.
Yeah, I thought
He's
I'd make us
gonna
sweat.
like sever contact, unfriend me.
Yeah.
That's it. So anyway, so then you did come back.
Yeah, so the log cabin that we were in, there were like, as I say, it's brand new, and Menna and Matt had laid on this little spread, these little tables, all sort of like you have in a garden shed, and there's sort of tablecloths with like, I think crisps or what do they call them in America? Chips and soft beers. Well, I can't remember now, but there was stuff on all these different tables, and the description, the drawings he sent me looked like this bunch of tables that had been in this, and the amber chairs where the chairs were placed, everything. It was spot on. There was no way she could have known what it was like inside that log cabin. I mean, she didn't even know the house. She actually did go to the house later.
Right, later.
Twice, or was it?
I think just
Yeah.
once. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I know I was there in real life.
Yeah, I've been there a
and
couple of
I
times.
was struck by how accurate the vision was.
You would love the house, Tommy. It's they're fans of like horror films and
oh wow,
anything to do with horror, and they've got so many amazing bits and pieces in their house. Like they got like a Bigfoot in the hall, I think,
and a Dalek.
A Dalek, Dalek.
Send me the address. I'm
Real,
going.
real Daleks.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. You'll probably get an invite for listening.
Oh, there we go. Yes, please.
They're really, really good people.
That's wild,
And they
though.
got fantastic. Yeah.
And that was one instance, and then there was another one.
Yeah, when I was at home in Bute,
and it was just like really random, real sporadic.
Just a weird little thing.
Never, if this was astral travel, I wasn't trying. Never happened to me before. Hasn't really happened since that I know of. But yeah, it was just a very mundane experience.
Well,
we've
both done it now, I think. I'm pretty sure I have.
Only that one, it was just, I was just standing, again, it's like standing beside you, sort of from a viewpoint of beside you and maybe a little bit elevated up. Yeah. But again, I could sort of feel your emotions and see what you were doing sort of almost from your perspective. And again, I sent you
it's like the
little description. It was like a little brief.
It's like a possession almost. It's like a brief possession.
No, but I wasn't like I didn't take you over, but I was like
No, but you were like
close to you.
sort of listening in somehow.
Yeah,
You
like I
know?
could sort of hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
But
I've thought a lot about all this. I don't think like distance, physical distance means nothing. You
yeah,
know, we're all like a hairbreadth away.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
convinced of
We're
that.
all a lot more
It's just
connected.
what we're projecting. Yeah, oh
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
And I think some
Yeah.
people,
Oh, and I had another just thought just now. Sorry, I forget it otherwise. But when we were in that log cabin, all of those people in there, just about everyone, say, who was in there that night, it was probably maybe 15 or 20 people. The vast majority of them had had paranormal experiences of like some of them quite extreme. I mean, like the guys that I mentioned earlier, the Kinsella brothers. I think I might have got their name wrong. And one or two of the others, they've had a lot of experiences. I'd had a lot of experiences before that for years, and I'm wondering whether it amplified. You
Hmm.
know, because there's a
Hmm.
lot of us in there.
Hmm.
Maybe
maybe it
because
was,
maybe some of those people had their own little like. Well, I'm pretty sure
mm,
they've got their own teams that are working with them. You know what I'm saying. I'm
Hmm.
talking about
right.
ET or whatever it is. I mean, some of those guys you can find them online. If you listen to their stories, it's unbelievable stuff.
Hmm.
So if they would be
Yeah.
aware, the people or beings working with them would be aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
So,
Well,
there's a lot more going
maybe,
on there than maybe I even imagined.
yeah, maybe that
Uh,
group made, like a beacon
yeah, that's
Yeah,
for
what
that
other
it
that
felt like
souls.
an
So
energy.
amplifier.
Yeah,
maybe, right,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
the only one visiting,
yeah.
obviously, but
It,
maybe
mm,
that's what drew me in, that
mhm.
just that collection, that collective of
yeah.
the
The power
energy
of it.
of
Yeah.
that.
It makes you
Maybe
wonder
it
if some of
was
the
sort of
ghosts that
just
we
sent out
see
these,
or the entities that we see,
Yeah,
it makes you wonder if maybe they are just a person that's astral projecting. Possibly. We could be, maybe we're not seeing it, someone that's
right,
passed or,
yeah,
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 you
it,
know,
yeah.
interesting.
right,
It's funny you should say that. I worked with a
right,
guy. I wish I could remember his name because I mean he was fantastic. Great knowledge of all this stuff. And I spent so this was about 2005. I spent a couple of years working for the Royal Mail. I was actually a self-employed landscape gardener, and I did a few designs as well. And during that time, I thought, I can take on another job as well, which was a bit of a mistake because I was like so knackered after doing all that and the gardening. But I did. I stuck it for 2 years, and one of these guys, I was chatting to him about ghosts one day, and he was one of these people that comes into your life, and he was only there for like a few months maybe, and then he went off and never. I can't even remember his name. He went off, got another job. But we were talking about ghosts, and I said something to him, and he said, "Mark," he said, "they don't have to be dead. You don't have to be dead to be a ghost. You could be asleep in the chair when you go home today." He said, "You fall asleep in the chair because, like, as posties you do because you've been up since 4." And he said, "You could be off haunting somebody. You don't know it when you've woken up. You could be haunting someone." And then,
Yeah.
it's something that never
Yeah.
even crossed my mind.
hmm
You don't
Makes a
have
lot
to,
of sense.
and obviously they're not all, you know,
yeah,
yeah,
Like
it's
you
something
think
to
like
think about.
shadow figures and things like
Um,
that. Like, I've woke up and seen like a shadow figure standing there, and then it might disappear. Like, are you seeing someone
hmm
yeah,
that might not be a
yeah,
ghost? That could be, well, it's something, an entity, but it could be someone that's just
that's right.
right,
traveling. That's
Yeah,
wild.
just somebody's astral body. Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
is.
Well,
Oh,
you
yeah.
mentioned that Janice has had the same experience with a figure, although we think that was somebody who was buried there in her
Well,
case.
yeah, we don't know, but
But
yeah, we've
yeah,
had so many paranormal experiences, both together
yeah,
and separately. But so anyway, the to go along the
yeah,
timeline, so we had the two instances of me possibly visiting you, but then we sort of this I probably should stress we didn't know each other that well when this was happening.
right.
So
that
this
makes
was
it even
sort
stranger.
of I don't know. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but it's like almost like our souls recognized each other.
Before we did.
Before we
Yeah.
recognized each other.
Yeah.
It's like our
Wow.
souls knew
Yeah.
that it was like something that had already happened. So it does sort of, give you sort of pause to think about the nature of time. Is it linear? Is it not? But since we have been together, obviously we both had other relationships in our lives. We're old. But I have never in my life felt so connected and so close to anyone ever. It's like, so for me, I can liken it to modern technologies. When you got a new phone and you put that cover on it, that screen protector, and when it's perfect, it just sucks right on there. It's like perfectly aligned, but it's sort of, you don't even know it's there. It's I don't know the right word. It just sort of infuses
Hmm.
almost, and
Hmm.
it feels like when we're
Perfect fit.
together, like not even puzzle pieces, something smoother and
Hmm.
more.
Oh wow.
Oh, um,
Like a glove.
yeah,
Glove.
Yeah.
Hand in
like a
glove.
glove, but even like I
Yeah.
say, like
Yeah.
a
It's like
phone and a screen
they
protector.
work
It's
they
just
work
got
together. Like they
right in.
work together so well that they're just like they're one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how it felt when we got together. It's like so many things
Mm.
aligned. And, I hate to use the M word, but it was almost magical, just the
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
the pieces aligned, the universe aligned so that we could
Hmm.
even meet. I mean, it
Yeah.
was not, it was not planned. It was just all the things that
Yeah.
had to happen for us to even meet.
It was meant to
And
be.
then for me to say, oh, he's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for Mark to say, oh,
Well,
well,
yeah.
yeah, she's annoying, but yeah.
He's annoying. And he embellishes. Yeah, right. Thank you.
Mark, what was you thinking when you
I'm not
got
going to let
that
you forget
picture?
that.
What was you thinking when you got that picture?
Sorry, say that again.
What was you thinking when you got the picture of the
Oh,
room
right. Yeah.
and that you realised that she had seen where you was and like what
Yeah.
was going through your mind at
It
that thought?
was, it was incredible. It was like shock, I suppose. It was like, how the hell does she know? And then I think I would have just sort of like cancelled out all the, like, I knew she didn't know anybody there. There was
Hmm.
no way she knew anyone there. She wasn't in touch with anybody. So I suppose it was like my way of, I mean, I already knew that this stuff was real anyway. So I didn't, it wasn't like I wasn't like converted or anything. I just sort of, it was just more affirmation, I suppose. It's like, oh yeah, I knew this stuff worked, and now I know for sure again.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was just weird. I mean, I still think it's weird. But then I've done similar things. I mean, so I've not. So yeah, I'll tell you the other one. So this is see, there's little things that there's like little things that like when I wrote out Why It's Weird, well, there were certain things that I felt comfortable sharing, and there were other things I thought, no, I'm not going to say that because that is either a bit freaky or it's a bit uh,
That's what we like.
could it could almost be pervy actually. So I thought, no, I'm not
Well,
going to put, not going to put because I can't do it. But then at a later point, as I got more comfortable with it, and I thought, well, I don't really care because I'm in my 60s, and there's always going to be people like listening to this now who don't believe a word of anything we're saying, and they're probably like that with most people, and they make stupid comments on Facebook or YouTube. But I find those people, you're never going to convince them anyway
mhm. We
because
ignore
like
them.
they've already made them. So yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So anyway, I'll take me off the subject. What was I saying? So yeah, my brain's going to sleep.
You weren't about to be say anything
Yeah. So
risque at
oh
all.
yeah. So yeah. Well, I
So
can a little bit. It's not really risque, but
Do
So
it.
I don't know whether this came after the visit or not.
Yeah,
Well,
I
because
it would have been after because we
yeah,
didn't.
okay. So because I hadn't actually met her in for real in 3D, I hadn't met her, and I didn't know I have a word. So I thought, well, and there was a little by this time, I suppose, there was a little bit of flirting going on, and we won't go there. But basically, I sort of felt a bit safe in a way. But I thought, well, I can be a bit cheeky. I can try things that maybe I haven't tried before, and it doesn't matter because if nothing, if we fall out or we just stop with each other or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not a problem. So I was a bit braver than maybe I would have been.
As was
So
I.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
thanks.
So then, but obviously that changes as I got to know her better. It became a proper friendship and so on and so on. But one of the things I try to do because now, if we go back to like when I was a teenager, I used to read books by people like Colin Wilson and Monroe, one who did all the astral traveling stuff. They both talked about this idea that you can leave your body astrally, which of course I think I did when I was younger anyway. You know, all I know, I might still be doing, I don't know. But I knew that was possible. I knew that was a possible thing in my world. I thought, yeah, that's. And I thought, well, I was also coming around to like I'd left a lot of that stuff on the back burner for a long time because like I had a really scary experience when I was like 15 or something like that, and it put me off because I was trying to call in like just because like young and naive. I thought, oh, this is just a bit of fun. And I'd been reading these books from I think it was Colin Wilson or someone, and he was talking about another guy. I think it was Tom Lethbridge or someone like that, and he was saying that you can call this stuff in, and I can't remember the details. I remember looking at that and thinking, "Oh, this is cool. I'll do this," and I tried to do it, and I think again, I think it's something I can do because like when I was older and I did work, so I know it, but I have that in me to do that, and as a youngster, I didn't know that, but obviously I did because I sort of grew something. I used to have quite a few experiences in my house, and at the time I thought, well, maybe it's because I did that. I shouldn't have done that because I did that same thing. Was sort of like using your mind, you mentally project, you call them in. So something did happen, and I got a hand on my shoulder, actually, this shoulder. And no, hang on, yeah, that one, my right one, and a hand just came down on my shoulder, and nothing there. And this is when I was like 15, whatever it was. I have to look it up. But that put me off. It scared me at the time. And I sort of put it on the back burner. And then I was just getting into that age when all I wanted to do anyway was like play football and prop, as you know, Tommy. And, listen to music and girls and all this. So I put it on my back burner. So it was always there. All this paranormal stuff was always there, but it was like I just left it a bit. You know what I mean? It was just got a
Hmm.
bit dusty, left it
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
until I met. We go full circle back to when my mate moved down to Cornwall. Morris, getting back to the beginning of his chat, he sort of got me interested in it again. He was giving me all the mind, body, spirit stuff. I was sort of talking about ghostly experiences. He'd never had any ghostly experiences, but he had all this knowledge of meditation and all this stuff. So between the two of us, we were dabbling in all this stuff again. So sort of going off, trying to get back to where I was. So the meditation side of it, you're gonna have to help me back. Get to where was I?
Okay, you weren't going to talk about anything risque.
Oh yeah. So okay. So I knew this stuff was. I was because there's so much of this. This is the
Yeah.
problem. There's so much of it, and
Hmm.
there's so many links that go back and forth over the
There's
years,
a lot of layers
which
to
is
this
why I
stuff.
went through that because it shows it's always been there. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
always been
many.
there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So then I thought, well, I could try. Now I don't know. I think you suggested it. So This is before we met. Janice is in her room in this beautiful old house. Not this one, another one.
No, this is
And
just old.
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. And there was this. She sent me this picture. It was quite clean, I might add. It was quite clean, but of her room and that, which but we'd known each other some time. And there was this old dresser mirror, like a big mirror with two wings. You know, like the wings on either side of it. Big dresser. And we've been talking about astral projection and all this stuff, and it might have been after your experience.
It was, yeah,
Yeah,
because by this time
which
we
would have
knew
led
each
us
other
to that.
better.
Yeah,
Right.
so it led us into that conversation, right? So I don't know how this happened, whether it was suggested or what, I don't know, but I heard this stuff, and you see it all the time you've seen it, Tommy, I know you, where people come through mirrors, right? They use mirrors to get into property, like ghosts,
Hmm.
whatever. They'll come through a mirror,
Hmm.
which is why
They cover them up.
Victorians used to cover them up with a
Mhm.
blanket,
Hmm.
and they do
Mirrors
that
are
at
like
wakes, don't they?
portals. Yeah.
In Ireland, they cover them up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
portals. Yep.
So basically, I thought, now this is where it gets weird. I thought, I know what I'd do. It was really just like um, a dare almost. Yeah, but you can't do it, something. So I thought, I
I
wonder.
didn't say that, by the
I,
way. That was not a dare from me
okay,
saying that. We'll
so
just make that clear.
so
Not me.
mentally, I basically when I was alone. Now, there's nothing naughty about this. It's just mental head stuff, right? I thought I'm gonna now. What you do is what I did. You mentally think about what you want to do, or it could be anything. It could be just walk down the road, right? But you're walking astrally, and you talk yourself into it mentally, and you feel you're doing it. That's the feel you're doing it. You have to feel the movement of your legs walking or whatever. And I thought I'll step through that mirror because I know where the mirror is in the room, right? So I went through people listening to this thinking this bloke's fucking nuts, right? And I can understand that.
Not on this
Can you
show.
bleep that out?
Not on this
But
show.
No.
It's fine.
but
Probably.
but all I can say is what I said earlier. It's like I don't care because I know I can do this, and I know other people can do it.
Hmm.
And I imagined. Now I'm not saying I. This is where it's difficult to explain it. I imagined myself like literally, if you did it now, if you shut your eyes and you think about it, obviously we're too busy talking and that we can't. You imagine yourself climbing through and then walking over, and I walked over, and in my mind's eye, and it was not a. I should point out, this is not a sexual thing. This is purely like an experiment, right? I walked over, and in my mind's eye, I could picture Janice in her bed. And I walked over, and I don't know whether I pecked her on the cheek or whatever. And I can't remember how that finished, whether I walked back through, I don't remember that bit. Now, I, when I got through that process in my mentally, I just sort of laughed at myself and I thought, you bloody idiot. No, none of that happened. None of that happened. Right? Because I didn't feel that it did, but I went through the motions. This is the important thing. It's difficult to explain it. You go through the motions of doing it in your mind. You tell yourself you're doing it, but you don't get the full experience when you're doing it. But you are doing it. I think you are doing it. And this is where Janice comes in. So she'll tell you. And I didn't tell her I was going to do.
Oh, we froze.
Probably just generated
Right.
another email. And it went something like, were you possibly experimenting with astral traveling last night?
Yeah.
Because I felt, so for my part, I was lying in bed. And for my part, I felt someone like slip in with me and spoon me. And it
Yeah.
wasn't, now this sounds,
I can't remember doing that bit.
yeah. So that was pretty clear. It was not scary. That was the thing.
The
It's
same
shocking,
night.
isn't it?
The
It's
same
shocking.
night.
It was like almost asleep.
Was it the same night?
I
can't
think it
remember.
was.
Yeah.
It was very close.
But I never
Either
told her
that
anything.
or you
Yeah,
sent
yeah,
someone or some part of your spirit remained or something,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I felt this
Wow.
presence and it wasn't frightening. It was very
Mm.
warm. It was very comforting and loving. And I was just like, whoa, did
Oh,
I really feel that?
now,
And
now,
so
the other
that's
thing you
when,
should point out is, okay, so you had that experience. Eventually, I'm talking like a year, like whenever, I can't
oh,
remember. When we met for real,
hmm
without going into too much detail,
yeah.
she recognized,
It's like, oh,
because we'd all got a different energy, a different feel.
right. I was like, oh,
She went, oh
that,
my God, that is what I experienced.
yeah, that really
Wow.
was you. So
Yeah,
I
that's
had
all I'm
that
gonna say.
confirmation.
Yeah,
It's like that.
yeah. Isn't
It,
that weird and
That's
freaky?
yeah.
incredible.
So
That's
Freaky,
anyway,
incredible.
yeah.
yeah.
Freaky podcast is the right place to say
Yeah.
it, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
like an
And we've
astral
had
astral
so
love story.
much
We're
of
sort of
that.
coming out with this stuff now because we,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, but it
Wow.
was, yeah.
We kept this stuff, most of this stuff, because we went on Soraya and talked about this stuff as well. Um, this actual stuff we talk about
Mm,
tonight, but apart from Soraya, you're the only one we've sort of discussed it at any length.
right.
I've never wanted, because again, it's a bit. What's the word like?
Paranormal porn? I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, I love it.
almost. It's like
We won't go there.
beyond the pale. It's almost like it's just that little step too far. But
No, I find it
Right.
so
and for
interesting.
years, I've been sort of talking on for years. I've never talked about it.
Yeah.
You know,
But it
because
was,
I didn't feel ready to talk about it either
yeah.
because I'd had a I'd had a previous life at Janice and I didn't really want to discuss this stuff. For the same
Yeah.
reasons I didn't want to put stuff on Facebook because I
Right.
knew that my very sort of square family who don't buy into this stuff would be probably talking behind my back saying, oh, he's
Mm.
bonkers. He's been on that Tommy Cullum's podcast talking nonsense because they don't get it, do they?
No,
They
no.
don't get it.
But
And
how
I
can you
shouldn't let it bother
explain that?
me.
How can you
Yeah.
explain that?
Well,
That there's too much there that you
Yeah.
guys have experienced
Yeah.
that confirms what was going on. It's incredible.
right.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And what was there anything else like that? I can't remember anything else really
So,
top of my head.
yeah, it wasn't really until we met. Well, things continue. I
Yeah,
mean,
odd
I think
things just
we just sort
Did
of amplify just
yeah.
the strange together is
I mean,
greater than when
yeah.
we're apart because it sort of amplifies our energy, like, like the group of people, like, that
Yeah.
whenever people get together who experience this high strangeness,
Yeah.
I think it does sort of form an energy and sends it out into
Mhm.
the greater ether
Uh-huh.
that, hey, this is, a group, this is a unique energy, and it maybe draws more of the same, just
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
like attracts like, and then
Yeah.
you get more of it just because
Yeah.
you're vibrating to that frequency that draws in more
But
of it.
Tommy, I
Mhm.
think there's like we're all obviously different. I mean, that goes without saying. Every one of us is different in some way, and we might have certain skill sets goes in certain directions in this stuff, and mine will be different to yours. And you've had loads of experiences. Janice has had loads, but we're all sort of different. And like if you like, we were watching a guy on one of the channels last night or the night before. Ancient Ghosts or something. He was really good actually. What I mean, cool guy. He wears a bowler hat and a long coat. Do you know the guy I mean?
Mhm. I'm
He's
not
really
sure.
good. But the point is that
We should have written that.
we're trying to remember it. But we've seen a lot of his shows and we don't like them because mostly it's cheesy or you've got people running around screaming and all this stuff, and or you got people standing in the dark saying, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" And it's like I can't watch it. But this guy did a little bit of everything, and he was also a medium. I think he didn't
Right.
sort of brag about it. He didn't sort of make a big fuss about it, but he was actually seeing or getting no, he was getting impressions of people and he was getting names and he could tell he was in his old church and he seemed genuine. He knew there was like a couple of presences around and he would respect people and he'd get little bits of info from them. But what I'm saying is he had that energy, that powers, whatever, those skills. Um, I don't get that so much. I don't see ghosts every day or anything like that. But I have done, and that's what I find interesting. How and why we see this stuff and others don't, and
Hmm.
how some people might see it every day. I wouldn't want to see it every day, and others like me maybe see it once a year or something. Whatever it is.
Hmm.
Um,
Which is still quite a
and
lot compared to
what
some
is it
people.
about? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we do need to start writing down our
That
experiences.
guy's name, Chris Horton.
Okay,
Have a look online, see
I'll
if you can
check him
find him. And
out.
he's on. He's worth watching. He's good. He's
Awesome.
good, and he also reads. Oh,
Yeah, and
Can
has his own.
can I
Yeah,
ask
he's
you
really good.
guys?
It's
yeah.
it's way better than the
Awesome. Can I ask
yeah.
you guys if you've ever astral projected like knowingly at the same time together?
Oh, and we've never tried.
No.
That's not anything we yeah, since
No.
we've been together, um, it feels like we found each other. It's like almost the purpose of our astral projection
Hmm.
was to find each other. And now that we've found each other physically, we don't need to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
we don't need to
Yeah.
anymore, but we could as an experiment,
I don't
we
know why,
could
but
try.
that old song came to mind. I don't know. It was a now that we found love, what a weekend with
Yeah.
With
it.
it.
I don't know why,
Yes.
but yeah, it's an old disco.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, but it maybe would
Anyway,
be interesting to
um,
maybe try at some point. I'm not
Yeah,
telling you what to
yeah.
yeah,
do, but
Yeah,
like maybe I don't know. I don't know how you would do it, but
right.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe test it as well. Like get some
Yeah.
a bit like the remote viewing, isn't it? You
hmm
give them a
It would
target.
be right.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It might be worth looking.
You're definitely there's
Um,
definitely a strong connection there, man. To be able to do that together and that is
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
incredible.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting that Janice is a lot more. It makes it sound like I'm not interested. I am interested in it, but she's a lot more into this ghost stuff, if you want to call it that, than I am because she'll say to me at night sometimes like, "Oh, let's look at this show," and it's like, and I just want to watch. I just want to watch somebody traveling around America or something because like that to me is a little bit more.
Hmm.
I think it's just like and what's the word I'm looking for? It's like not. It's just I've seen so much of it, and it's like these ghost hunting groups, and like people say to me, "Oh, do you go on the?" In fact, we've just been asked to go on one, a beautiful, fantastic house, and
Hmm.
we will do it, and it'll be fun. But I can live without it because I get experiences anyway. I don't need to
You
go
don't
chasing them.
Hmm. Hmm.
right.
Yeah.
And I won't be
It's
disappointed
sort
if I
of
go and I don't see anything. In fact, I'm actually not that brave at doing this stuff. Like, if I'm
Same as me.
like, there's a big place in, yeah, but there's
yeah.
a place in Illinois, Ashmore Estates, it is Illinois, isn't it?
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
a well-known, it's like an old mental home or a
An
pauper's
alms
home,
house.
alms
Yeah.
house, and it's well known for ghostly goings on. People have seen stuff,
It's been
you
featured
know,
on quite a
yeah, all the
few
big shows.
shows.
And we went there, and you've had a few experiences. Yeah, but
Hmm.
the one I had was I was just wandering around the second floor. It's about three, and I was up there on my own, just wandering around, and I was trying to be brave, but I'm not very good at you know, how can I put it? I'm just always expecting to see some sort of little girl in one of these rooms, sort of with black eyes or something, And
Yeah.
when I see ghosts, I don't know they're ghosts until I turn around and they've gone. and it's not scary at all. But if I'm wandering around an old house on my own and I see something, I don't really want to see it, partly because I don't want to have to go downstairs and say, I just saw this, because it's like there's no evidence there. But if I
Hmm.
see something in my everyday life, which I have done, it's like a different thing. I can't explain it, but
Hmm.
it's not like when you go on a ghost hunt or whatever, you're sort of there for that reason.
Hmm.
And anyway, so I just went around with a camera and probably just my phone, I can't remember now. And I walked into this room, which used to be a nursery, and I just literally slowly turned the phone around and I went out again, carried on, nothing, absolutely nothing. But when I played it back, you could hear children playing in the room on my, I still got it somewhere. And it's quite clear. You can hear the children cry, like playing, like joyful
Wow.
children, you know.
Yeah.
And so, what was I saying about that place? So Ashmore Estates, yeah, I don't really like
Hmm.
sneaking around old buildings like looking for it. It's
Hmm.
like it's sort of scary.
Yeah.
So I can see why these people go "Whoa!" and run. I can sort of see it.
Yeah.
But as I say, when I see stuff, generally not looking for it. It's just happens.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
things like
Because
it's like
really,
Yeah.
some weird guy, and then I gone, or a
the o-
miner. I've seen a miner like that.
the only evidence we really get with the paranormal is through talking about people's experiences, I think. I know we have caught some things on camera and stuff like that, but really it's
Yeah,
just
Right.
experiences and people sharing experiences and people like
yeah, yeah,
like you
yeah,
guys, like I've experienced that, and it sort of collaborates, and I think that's really the only evidence we really have, to be honest.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And to be honest, I don't really. I've got to a point in my life I don't really care about proving it to
Hmm.
anybody. I mean,
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
because like we
You're
said
not,
earlier, it's like everyone's got their own ideas about this stuff, and
yeah.
and
Right.
so yeah,
Some people
Yeah.
have
So I
experiences
think,
and not even believe it still.
yeah,
right.
yeah. That's
Wow.
right.
Yeah.
They'll try and write it off, won't they?
Well,
Hmm.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Like your
yeah, yeah,
siblings have that too, and sometimes you will have an experience with someone and they have it too, and then later on you're recounting it,
it happens all the time, doesn't it?
they don't remember it. They don't want to, if they do remember it, they don't want to discuss
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So a lot of
Hmm.
people
yeah.
have paranormal
Well,
avoidance
I've
and
got
denial,
I've
I
got a
think.
classic example of that. So my father had his experience when he was on his bike. I talked about the gunpowder ghost, and a long story short, he had this experience. It was really quite a scary one, and the description he gave us and everything. Now, I would occasionally bring this up with my old mates, the ones who went to Corfe Castle, the same guys. Do you remember the story about the night sort of thing? Um, so it would have that subject would have come up occasionally. My oldest mates would have known about this story anyway. And at some point, probably I don't know, in our early 20s, one of my mates took me to one side and basically told me that because well, I should explain the pub we used to go into was at the end of my street, so I could walk down there. But they lived in like about two villages away, and it was like a this is before. Well, actually, we had motorbikes, but they would occasionally come down on their, or this guy would come down on his bike to keep himself fit, and he would just padlock it outside the pub, come in for a few drinks, then go home. Now he had to pass quite close, not the actual place, but yet quite close to where my father had his experience. And he used to, this guy, my mate Alan, he used to cycle home. And he told me, and this is a guy that would never ever talk about this stuff. And he would never ever tell you a story. He was very quiet, really. And he told me one night all this experience that he had, and he was trying to figure it out in his head whether it was the same thing that happened to my dad, and it sounded like really really similar. And it was basically he was on his bike, he felt there was somebody following him, and there was like this sort of noise, and it wasn't his wheels, but there was something. This is like quiet, it's like in England, very quiet country, dark roads, no lights, nothing. And similar circumstance, but probably about half a mile or so away where my dad had the experience. And everything he said about it, everything matched what had happened to my dad. But it happened to my dad in about 1961. This was happening to him in probably about 1981, roughly. And because I'm interested in that stuff, I remembered it, right? I remembered him telling me. And then years later, I mentioned it to him. That never happened. He's like, he knew nothing about it, which, and he's not, he wasn't being difficult. And he said, no, I don't remember that happening. He hadn't, and I
Wow.
don't think he was lying either. I think he'd either just, or just put it out of his mind.
Yeah,
But
a
I
lot of
know that
people
he
do
told me
that.
that stuff. But there's another, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that it's just
Wow.
incredible. It's like they're sort of selective of what they remember. But then I think
Yeah.
we all do that. We all
Mhm.
forget stuff.
For sure.
You
For
know, like
sure.
like when I meet up with my old mates, they tell me things that I did that I don't remember, and I tell them things that they did and they can't remember. So,
Yeah.
because different things are important.
Yeah. Yeah. We,
I think, yeah, sometimes people just, yeah,
mm,
people who don't normally have paranormal experiences, it just frightens them to such a
hmm
yeah,
degree.
yeah,
hmm
They just forget about it, either have selective amnesia or really it's so traumatic they
hmm
can't remember.
yeah.
So I, I have of my children, well, I have I have five children. And of those five, I'd say probably two of them sort of embrace the paranormal. One of them actually has some gifts. Well, actually, two of them do, and the
Wow.
others just won't go near it. They're very cool. And one of
yeah,
those has had experiences, and she's not comfortable discussing it. She doesn't like to be reminded of them. She's, yeah, very, very
hmm
avoidant of that, even
hmm
though she has had experiences.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's true with a lot of people. They're
I know.
so uncomfortable with it.
yeah.
They
hmm
can't, they just can't
Well,
go there.
one of
Yeah.
those daughters she's talking about, did I say her name now? Okay. So they lived in this house in like a modern house which Janice's father built
Mhm.
on that patch of land that she was talking about earlier, where there'd been an earlier trading post and everything, and like Native Americans had lived there around there. They'd stopped there to trade. And now they lived in that house for a while. They actually moved south uh, recently, and that house is empty. And we knew there was stuff in there because I went in there. Well, Janice knew long before I did, but I went in there once to go and pick something up because it wasn't being lived in at this time. I think they'd already moved. Yeah, they'd already moved, hadn't they? And I had to go and pick something up, and I had to go in there, and I was a little bit wary because I knew that this place just I always got a bit of a weird feeling there, and I knew that I might see something, hear something, and I was a bit nervous. And I went in there, and I heard somebody walking around upstairs, and there was no one in there, but there was definitely someone walking around. And then in more recent times, Janice's son, who's a builder, stores timber and stuff in there. And it's a house. It's a modern sort of 3-story, sort of 2-story detached on a big plot of land. And her son was in there with, well, no, actually, one of his workers was in there, a guy called Brent. And he heard this lady come into the house and sort of say, hello, or something similar to that. And of course, it looked like there's nowhere near. It's in the middle of nowhere, really. And then we went over there and we met up with a guy called Larry Wilson, who's a paranormal investigator, a really, really cool guy. And we were just sat in like a bay window type thing, wasn't it?
Mhm.
And we were discussing Larry's. Larry's got dozens of his EVPs and stuff. He was playing at an EVP from another, or lots of them, from another job, another site.
Investigation. Yeah.
And so we were listening to him, just the three of us, and around his table.
Well, you
No one
were,
else in the house was there.
yeah, well, we had the
Yeah,
recorder running because you were actually
yeah,
interviewing Larry
yeah. I
for
was
your
sort of
own
into. Yeah,
podcast.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. Which I've still
So
got. I've
we
still got
were,
it somewhere. I've never released it yet. So I was I was just like listening to, but I've also got an ear open all the time because I'm quite clairaudient anyway. I hear things all the time. So I suddenly heard this woman like say hello or something similar to that. Like she just walked. It was like somebody had walked into the house and they were just letting us know they were coming in, which I think is exactly what it was. Actually, I
Mhm.
think that's what it was. Because I think they treat us with respect sometimes, and they just they don't sneak around. Sure. But anyway, I heard this, and Larry was busy talking about his own stuff. That's what he was doing at the time. Janice is listening to him, but I hear this, and I went, "You can hear it. All it's on the recording." And I said, "Did you hear that?" And Larry said, "What?" So, and he went to play. I said, "No, no, not the one you're talking about. There was one here.
So we
I
had,
actually heard it physically. So I didn't hear it from his machine. Or this was something in the house. So then we played it back. Was it the next morning?
well, no, it was a
I
few
can't
weeks
remember.
later we played
Yeah.
it for Brent,
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah. But
builder
we
who had
played it
heard
back
it.
to hear it
Yeah.
first. And basically, you could hear this woman. It sounded like a woman coming into the
Wow.
Mhm.
house. And it's clear, really clear. And I sent it to Larry, and Larry loved it. And then we took it to this builder, her son's employee. I didn't tell him anything. We didn't preload any suggestion or anything. We just said, just have a listen to this. And he's like, listen, it's down really close. Listen, and he went, that's what I heard.
At the
Yeah, at
house.
the same house,
So yeah, so it
So
was the
yeah,
same without
Wow.
any prompting from
no, we
us.
didn't say where we got it or anything. I
Yeah,
don't think so.
How
but
cool is
that's
that?
because
Yeah.
he's one
Mm.
of those people that weird stuff doesn't happen to very often. And when he was there
Yeah.
working for my son at the
He's
house,
always uncomfortable there.
yeah, he was. So my mother had at the time had gone to nursing home. She's since passed away. But at the time, Brent was there sort of getting the house ready because my daughter and her family were going to be moving in. And Brent did not like being there. He was uncomfortable
Wow.
there.
Yeah.
Um, and Larry, that Mark has mentioned, previous to that, Larry and a colleague of his had done an investigation there and they had gotten a lot of EVPs at
Yeah.
that house.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
felt validated, because
Yeah.
growing up, all these things used to happen.
Yeah.
And then we found out subsequently the history of the house, which we didn't really know at the time. We knew there had been something there, but it wasn't
Mm.
until someone I worked with dug into the old records and found out all the historical aspects of its ties into history and the Illinois militia that Lincoln may have been a part of back in the
Yeah, Lincoln was actually
1850s,
there. He was actually
1840s, around that
was he just like
time.
a recruit?
He was part of the Illinois militia.
Because he's got a lot of contact with connections rather with this area where we are.
Right,
He is like
Wow.
you see his figure everywhere.
right. Is Lincoln, yeah,
Statue. Yeah.
Springfield is Lincoln,
Yeah.
Lincoln
Lincoln
Central.
Land. Lincoln Land.
Right, yeah, it's Lincoln Land.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
so it really is
Yeah.
steeped in history, but yeah, to have that validation of the EVPs and everything else, it was pretty amazing. But um, I should add that when I was growing up, my mother was very skeptical, very down to earth. No, none of this paranormal. We didn't even call it paranormal. None of this ghost nonsense. You're just, this stuff is, no, it's all hooey. We're not going to talk about it. So we didn't, but
When you're dead, you're dead.
right. So, but, and we have talked about this privately before, how sometimes when people they say they get older, and my mother had had a stroke. In fact, she
Yeah.
had two strokes. And sometimes that sort of opens up
Yeah.
these pathways or this ability. And sometimes, yes, it is cognitive decline. It is, dementia. And yes, there are hallucinations, but these were not like normal things that people would have hallucinations about. These were things like, and they tied into the history. So she would call me, and the picture window that Mark is talking about, she had this big window. She loved to sit and look out her window, even at night. It was a very rural area. There's nobody around. It's not an area where children would be running around at night. It's just,
Very quiet.
very quiet, very rural, very peaceful. And she called me and she would say, there are these boys, they're back again. They're running along my porch and they're hitting my porch rails
When
with
they
these
rattle along the
sticks.
rails with a stick,
Like, yeah,
like
she's
that.
like,
They
they,
were
they
doing
just
that.
keep running and doing this and they won't stop. Okay, what should I do? Should I call the police? Like, no, I
Yeah.
don't. Wait, my son lived close by and he's like, well, we'll call him to come check. And of course, he'd never find anything because there wasn't anything to find. But
What about the
then,
time she rang and said about the children?
oh yeah, we had,
Yeah.
so the place was a big place and it sort of was like a family gathering places. So we had birthday parties for the children and grandchildren there. It was grandma's house. It was very, big and welcoming and inviting in the daytime. Yeah. So we'd had a party that day, and later on the evening, my mom called me and she says, why have you left this little boy here? Is somebody going to come and get him? And I was like, Mom, no,
That
nobody's,
is
all
creepy,
the
isn't it?
children are accounted for. Nobody's left one
Yeah.
there. She's like, no, he's sitting in the corner and he's looking at me.
Yeah.
What should
Does
I do? Like,
that always makes me
uh,
think of the Black Eyed
it's
Kids.
just,
I'm not saying,
I was terrified
yeah.
for her.
I mean, did he have black
It
eyes?
Wow.
I
just,
don't know.
no, but it
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, obviously none of the grandkids, but to her, this
It
child
was
in the
real.
corner, he was very real.
Yeah.
And you know
Wow.
what?
Did
Yeah,
you
it,
did
it
you see anything in that house? Did you
very
ever see
freaky. Just
anything?
when I was growing up, I heard things more than I would see
Mm.
things. I don't really see things ever. I heard a lot of strange things.
Except for the guy at Adelia.
Yeah,
That was
well,
that one.
yeah, but at that
What was
house,
that?
no, but I think a lot
Yeah.
of it being a child, I think
Yeah.
I blocked it out.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that
Adelia.
was when you were supposed to go flying over to England.
Oh, right. Yeah,
But the
we're
flight,
jumping forward in
yeah,
time. Yeah,
sorry,
we're
yeah.
no longer
Yeah.
in
This
the
is, well, you
treehouse.
said you'd never seen anything, but I know you saw that.
Oh, right. Well, I've seen
But
things peek around the corner. I've seen
yeah. Oh, and Hat
Hatman
Man guy, yeah.
on two occasions.
Yeah.
Both
Wow.
of them were at times in my life that were traumatic and not, I was not in a good place,
Hmm.
really. Both of those times, it seemed like a very dark, negative, oppressive energy. But at the time, both experiences, I experienced it as yes, I was asleep. And yes, you would say sleep paralysis and those types of things. Yes, that does sort of play in, except that I could move. I wasn't paralyzed. I mean, I woke up and I just had a feeling of being watched. And you look over in the corner of the room, and of course, the classic, the dark figure. But
Isn't that what you had?
prior
Yes,
to, I
yeah.
mean,
Darker
Yeah.
than
one of
dark.
these was back
Yeah.
back
Yeah. Yeah.
in the summer of 1990 was the first one. So that was before it really became popular. That was the first experience. The second one would have been about 2017 in that flat.
Yeah. Oh, that flat
That
she's talking about was horrible.
it had a really dark,
Yeah, I did
oppressive
not.
atmosphere.
When I used to come over, Janice was still working, and I was over for like a few weeks at a time sometimes. And just to be in, it was winter as well, some of the time, it was really, really cold. So there wasn't really an option of going out much because you couldn't stand the car. It's really, when it gets cold, it's really cold. So
Yeah.
I was sort of in this apartment, and I thought I'd gone prepared, loads of books, loads of TV, you could watch all these channels, but I just felt like an animal in a cage. It was so constrictive, and so I used
Yeah.
to force myself to try and get out during the day when she was at work. but it was just felt like there was something
But
else
it
in there
was,
with you, you know. I
yeah,
never
and I
saw anything, but it was horrible.
yeah, you seem to sort of take on, you sort of
I got
absorb
a bit
things
depressed, to
from
be
the
honest. Just
atmosphere.
yeah,
Hmm.
But
yeah, really horrible,
yeah, the Hat Man
heavy.
thing, um, that was again the same dark figure in the corner, but I thought that it was a person, and I thought they had come to kill me. It was that sort of just instinctual
Sounds like
terror.
a horror film,
Yeah.
really,
And
yeah.
I managed, and again, it wasn't sleep paralysis because I was out of that bed, out down the
And
hallway. I ran
stumbled.
so fast. I crashed. I forgot where I
Yeah,
was. I crashed into a wall, crashed into a mirror, gave myself a black eye.
yeah,
And then I was out in the living
yeah,
part and I realized, oh, I was still terrified. There was a person back in that
yeah.
room. And I finally got the courage to go back in and look. Of course there was nothing there, but it was absolutely
Wow.
terrifying.
But we used to get the voices as well. Like
Yeah.
the like I had somebody was trying to tell me his name. I might mention this before. Somebody was trying to tell me their name,
Yeah. In that apartment, we had a
and
lot.
then Janice had something similar. Like there's a tombstone near you or
Yeah,
something.
I heard a voice in my
Yeah,
ear
the
again.
way it was said was like
It was
there's a
like a
tombstone near
cadence.
you.
Yeah. But
Something
we
like
had found, we had like, we would walk around and explore it. It was kind of a rural area on the edge of Springfield, and it had been farmland, and these apartments had been just sort of thrown in, um, I'd say probably back in the 90s. They were a little bit old, but they just, slab foundation.
Hmm.
Back then, there were farmland on either side. And back then, and I have seen it here in America, people just sort of, when there was a farm, when there was a family, and people would pass away, and they would just bury them, you know, in the corner of the property or, by the oak tree or, wherever. But it
that.
was traditional to have these family plots. And later, when, companies purchased the land, they didn't check really close, to see because tombstones would have got,
Hmm.
they would have fallen over. They would have, even if there had been something, it was gone and they didn't look very closely. So there very well could have been a tombstone
A
very
bit
near
reminds
where
me of
our head would have
yeah,
been
like
that
the
night,
poltergeist films.
could
Now.
have been like right
Yeah.
Do you
under
remember that
us.
right at the beginning?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, not at
Yeah.
the beginning, was it?
And that's quite
Similar,
common
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to have that because they will,
They'll cut corners just to get the
Hmm.
job
right,
done
or
and
they
save money.
can't
Hmm.
find all the graves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They
that's right.
just think, oh, it's good enough.
Yeah, we've got them.
We'll just put down some concrete, cover
Hmm.
it all up. We'll never know. But then,
Hmm.
certain people come in and feel these
Yeah,
things and
exactly.
Yeah.
they do make themselves known.
Yeah.
So,
Because a lot of people say when you tell someone you've got a haunted house, they'll say, "How old is the house?" But it doesn't really matter, really, because there's been a lot of
Yeah,
activity and history there before. So it doesn't matter really how old the house is because
exactly.
stuff's happened there before the house was there, you know? So, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
right. And the
yeah,
bodies might still be there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Man, very interesting. I mean, the Hat Man is wild. So many
it's,
people see the Hat
yeah,
Man, and that is it is wild.
right.
mm,
Did it have like the
Yeah.
hat sort of
yeah, I've
shape?
never.
It
Yeah,
had the cloak, yes. So it was like the broad brimmed hat, but the cloak, it was just very dark. It was just very tall too,
yeah,
almost I would not to the ceiling, but almost I would
yeah.
say at least 6.5 feet tall.
Hmm. Wow, so pretty
Yeah.
big. Yeah.
But it just
Mm.
the presence, just that heavy, threatening presence, I think was so overwhelming.
Hmm.
I just thought I'm dead. It's just,
Yeah.
it's gonna kill me. He's at, the mouth. He's here to kill me.
Yeah.
So that's why just
Wow.
that instinct kicked in and like run, run
Yeah.
away.
Man.
Mm.
Wow, guys. I tell you, I've got to say, I've loved talking to you
Yeah.
tonight, both of you. It's been absolutely amazing hearing your story, hearing your
Yeah.
love
And
story.
you.
Yes.
It's so cool, and you're such a cool couple. And I want to thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
so
Thank you.
open and honest and sharing your experiences. It really is special what you guys have gone through.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing
Well,
it.
Oh,
like I say,
thank
when
you.
you get older, you don't really care. You just tell the
Yeah.
truth, and if people don't like it, well,
Yeah,
it's the
Yeah.
yeah,
best way of looking at
yeah,
it.
Thank you.
100%. Yeah, you're never going to please everyone. You're never going to
And
convince
we,
everyone,
yeah,
and it's not
we come
about that.
across very sort of,
Yeah.
yeah. I was going to say
Right.
we don't, you know, another couple might be sort of very sort of prim and proper, you know, they're sort of like all sort of take their turn to speak and be very to each other and yes dear, no dear. But we're not like that. We scrap all the time. That's the way we are,
It's just our relationship.
you know.
That's like me and my
So
wife.
like
Same thing.
and
It freaks our
yeah,
children. Yeah. Our children,
yeah,
both of us, our children, they don't
yeah,
understand and they think we're like
yeah,
fighting, but
yeah,
it's always sort of
yeah,
been our relationship
yeah.
just to give each other a hard time. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
what we do.
But actually, that's not just about couples, though, is it? Because I just that just reminded me. So Janice's who would it be? Her son-in-law's father, right? This lovely guy. He what is he 70 something? He's a retired copper, I believe, isn't he? What's his name?
Oh no,
Yeah,
he's an attorney.
attorney.
Pat,
Sorry, I know,
yeah,
but
Pat.
he's a retired guy, right?
Yeah,
And
Pat.
I've only ever known him as a retired guy, you know, and he's a lovely guy. Don't see him much, maybe once a year or something. And he's Irish, like very Irish, and he's very proud of his Irish roots, and they genuinely are Irish, you know, like not like some of them say they are, and they're not really, but he's genuine Irish, and obviously he knows I'm English, and so ever since the first time I met him, there's been a bit of banter, but it's always it's friendly, and it's just like we're sort of similar because I mean I've got a little bit of Irish in me anyway, but we're sort of similar because we're from Britain and Ireland. We're all pretty much the
Yeah.
same. We're a family, really.
It's the
That's the way I
same.
look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
100%.
when we meet, yeah, we sort of have a lot of banter, don't we? Tommy, you'll know this because you're
Oh, for
English, but
sure. Yeah.
that's the way blokes talk to each other. Like they rip into each other. Like my best mates, we rip into each other, or used to in the pub,
Hmm.
and like that's just the way it is. But it's
That's true
friendly. It's
friendship.
like
That's true
we wouldn't
friendship.
let a stranger.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like, if you don't get insulted, if somebody doesn't, if your mate doesn't insult you, you think, what's the matter with him? Is he upset with me over something? Because that's the way we Brits are, and I'd
Yeah.
say the Irish are the same. We're the same like that.
Hmm.
Now, the point of this is that this guy Pat, this older guy, we've although I've only met him like maybe 10 times in all, haven't I? But each time we have a bit of banter, and we talk quite loud at each other, and we go for each other. Like he'll make some jibe about the English or something. I'll make some jibe about the Irish. He's loving it. I'm loving it. Her daughter, Kate, said to Janice last time we met, she said, "Oh, Mark and Pat fell out. They were going for each other." It's like, no,
They're
that never
fighting
happens.
there.
You know, because
It
They're
was
all
just
they
banter.
traumatized
don't understand it
because
here.
they're
It's a different
fighting.
culture.
They're
They don't.
right.
Yeah, it's banter.
Yeah. And yeah, the same with us a lot of times. They
Yeah,
think we're fighting, but we're really just having fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
how we say I love you.
Yeah. For
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
That's right though. That is true love. You know, you have a joke and it's funny, man. That is very much how we are.
yeah.
Right.
It
Yeah.
could be that actually. While we're on that, talking about that sort of D.H. Lawrence, the writer,
Hmm.
they go to the other. He went to the other extreme. They used to like throw things at each other. They had full physical fights with his wife, Frida
Because
von Richthofen.
we don't do
Yeah, that might be a
We don't
bit.
go that far. We just fight. Yeah,
that.
yeah. We just use it
We
with
don't
the
Yeah.
verbal.
If
we
it
don't
get
want to get the
if
authorities
it gets
taking.
involved
violent,
here.
that is a problem.
Yeah. So,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Right. We don't do that.
So yeah, we don't go
Even
that
after
far.
a few drinks.
Yeah.
They were famous for it. Yeah.
Oh, well, you guys, I can
Anyway,
tell
we should.
you guys have got great energy and you're a great couple. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, your love story. I might call this episode
It's been a
Astral Love
pleasure.
Oh,
Story.
thanks.
But
Yeah.
thank you so much. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you
All
guys?
right.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, well, I've got all my books here. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, as ever, I haven't got my website going again. It's on my list,
But you are on
It's coming.
but
Instagram.
I'm on Instagram under Cuckoo Town Podcast. It's on its way, yeah. And I've this was the book I mentioned earlier, Wyatt's Weird World. I think I wrote that in about 2016,
Hold it up. Hold it up.
something like that.
Awesome.
And then that's all of these were my experiences from up to about 2015-ish. And then I did a couple of books on Cornwall, which was like the sort of a mixture of like the creepy stuff and culture and now the folklore and all this sort of stuff. So you got like volume one is like the north end of Cornwall, and that's the far west end. I did all the covers and everything myself. I don't know if you can
Yes.
see those.
Awesome.
That's what I'm
Right.
doing here.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, they're all two other things I've been involved in, which are fairy films, which is I can't say one day. Yeah, my essays. There's like about 11 essays in there. It's all about the way that films use folklore, and
with some of them
subtle
are
ones.
right.
Not like Labyrinth is like an obvious one,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of things like Twin Peaks, which I did, which is not so obvious, but it sort of shows you all the folklore and all that stuff, how it's used, sometimes unconsciously. People don't even know they're doing it.
Mhm.
It's there. And this one was I contributed an essay to it, Mystic Memoirs. So, and I've got a few in the works.
You said Weird American World.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Wyatt's Weird American World is that'll be
Yeah.
about 6 months, I should imagine, at the best.
Awesome, man.
So yeah, and yeah, Amazon and some of them on Barnes and Noble.
Awesome.
So
Well, I will share the links in
right,
the
well,
show
we should-
description so people can find you guys
Gentlemen.
easily. Thank you so
thank you,
much for
thank
coming.
you,
All right.
appreciate it. Yeah,
Guys,
Perfect.
we hope you've enjoyed the
Yes.
episode. If you
Yeah.
have enjoyed the episode, share it where you can. That is a great way to support us. And we'll be back very soon for more freaky conversations. In the meantime, stay safe and keep it freaky. Thank you very much, guys. I'm looking forward to the next. Thank you.